How to open a film. Promising Young Woman. Promising Young Woman tells the story of Cassie, a woman in her late 20s who has been traumatized by an event in her past that motivates her to enter increasingly risky situations involving men. This is her twisted form of revenge, which continues to escalate throughout the film to deadly results. I won't get into too much detail about the film, as you can find a lot of my general feelings on the film, as well as full spoilers for the plot, on my Best of 2021 video, where I rated Promising Young Woman the #1 film of 2021. This video, on the other hand, is about how the film opens and sets up its story. The opening shot of Promising Young Woman kicks off with some pretty sensual imagery. Close-ups of dancing, writhing bodies in a club, focused on their butts and hips as they dance to the music. These sorts of shots aren't really uncommon when setting the scene for a club. However, it's how director Fennell casts these shots that make them stand out. In these scenes, it is men who are dancing. They aren't even conventionally attractive males with fit physiques. What Fennell is doing is turning the male gaze on its head by reversing the focus to men in a way that is usually reserved for women. For those that don't know, the male gaze is typically used to refer to the way media, or the camera, films women in a pleasurable way for heterosexual men viewing. It assumes the audience is made up of aroused heterosexual men and films women in a way that they will enjoy most. Women are therefore excessively sexualized in cinema, and you're more likely to see a lingering shot of a woman leaning over than a man doing the same. So, this sequence has the roles flipped. And not only are we not watching sexy women gyrate and dance together, but it is a mix of, dare I say, normal men just having drunk fun in a club. Not very sexy, to be honest. Especially when the camera pulls back to show just how awkward and silly they all look. In real life, women don't typically behave or move in a manner that is constantly aware of how attractive they are to men. In fact, it's more likely in a club for a woman to be drunkenly dancing in an uncoordinated and silly way too. However, this film's use of the unattractiveness of the sequence, instead of using hot young men, adds to the tongue-in-cheek aspect of the film as a whole. The close-ups are a little uncomfortable to watch, as the intent is likely to make the viewer aware that they are watching people. This subsequently draws attention to the usual male gaze the audience has become accustomed to. And Fennell keeps this discomfort going strong for the next 5 minutes of her film. She sets the mood immediately, but uses this tongue-in-cheek atmosphere to really set the tone of the film and get us ready for the somewhat satirical and over-the-top events of the rest of the film. The first line of dialogue is,
"Fuck her! Fuck her!"
Yeah. This is no accident. The men are mocking a female colleague's attempts to further her career.
You think we're taking clients out to a strip club?
Which we can't even do anymore.
Exactly. We can't even do that anymore since the Christmas party last year.
This is clearly a reference to Me Too, and some of the less than stellar responses to the changes that have been taking place across industries since then. One of the characters, however, seems a little uncomfortable with the conversation. He defends the unknown women in the story.
I think it's because the golf club doesn't let women play there.
So?
So it means we're having client meetings without her.
This is Jerry, as we later learn. It's no coincidence that Jerry is played by Adam Brody, the baby-faced actor best known as sarcastic but sweet dork Seth. From the popular teen series The OC, seeing Brody in another awkward but likeable role doesn't feel very weird, and his personality matches well with audience expectations. There's a change in music when Cassie is introduced.
Oh, yeah, would you look at that? Good God almighty. Like, how'd you get some dignity, sweetheart? You know, they put themselves in danger.
The club music is still playing, but now it's less light and fun than the previous track, and has a deeper and distorted bass to it. The sound is punchier. The mood, once again, has shifted. Although we are still in a club, Cassie is lit up in the centre of a wide shot, drawing all attention to her and emphasising the significance of her introduction. This is where the film's plot really gets started. After the men mock Cassie, the conversation takes on a more predatory nature.
The idea if we all present a very
I mean, that is just asking for it. Look at that. Like, you'd think you'd learn by that age, right? Where even are our friends? Just kind of ran off somewhere? Leaving her laying around for anyone to pick up?
Sounds like a challenge, Paul.
Yeah, maybe.
By blaming Cassie, or her invisible friends, for her situation, the men are deflecting blame for the possible outcome they are talking themselves into. It's like a game to them, and Cassie is not a person, but a prize for whoever goes up to her first. Just as it seems that one of these obviously and proudly predatory men will make a move on Cassie, the audience can collectively sigh with relief as Jerry steps in.
See if she's okay.
Yeah, no, of course.
Sure. Go for it, big fella.
Jerry's act frames him as the hero in this scene, which is not necessarily a bad thing because Cassie is in a vulnerable position and he plans to help her. However, consider how she would be viewed here. She is transitioning from a trophy to be obtained by these men into the damsel to be rescued. It's this dangerous line of thinking that could lead Jerry to internally paint himself as the main protagonist of the story, and Cassie, despite how inebriated she is, his leading lady. It's in the taxi when Jerry's motivations change. It's interesting to note how Fennell frames this moment in the script. Jez laughs. She looks over and smiles hazily. Is there a spark here? She is really pretty. And she seems cool, from the 5 words she said.
Would you want it? Have a drink before hitting the hay?
In Jerry's mind, the moment is framed like a romantic comedy, the start of something really sweet and cute for the two of them. However, Cassie is ridiculously drunk and not able to comprehend the situation like Jerry or the taxi driver can. From what little we have learned from his character on screen, emphasised by the guidance in the script for the moment, Jerry does not see himself as manipulating Cassie here because his original intentions were to help her. Cassie never says yes, but he's already so enticed by the prospect of having this beautiful woman in his apartment that he forges on ahead regardless. Jerry takes Cassie's lack of a no to mean yes.
Yeah. Can you take us to 242 Raleigh Drive instead, please? It's a couple blocks.
The sober eyes of the taxi driver understand the situation, but he does not interfere. He does not want to get involved in whatever is developing in his back seat. Fennell reminds us of the taxi driver's complicit role in this development, by showing us his eyes reflected back to Cassie, and finally Cassie reflected back to him. Yet he stands by, and does not advocate for this vulnerable woman. In Jerry's apartment, the background music has vanished, which the audience may not actively notice, but has the effect of adding further discomfort as the upbeat tunes are gone. Matthew Harriet states in his article on silence in films that, when you strip a portion of the sound away from a scene, you create a void that the audience members must fill themselves in order to properly wrap their heads around what it is they are viewing. This creates a more immersive scene, adding to the tension as the audience is pulled closer to the characters and every sound they make.
Oh, that's disgusting.
You're so beautiful. Do you mind if I just go in?
At this point, the audience knows where the scene is going, even if Jerry is still willfully ignoring the sketchiness of the situation and Cassie's disinterest. The scene starts with Jerry pouring Cassie more alcohol. Maybe he's trying to make her more comfortable or be courteous as he welcomes his guest into his home. Or maybe he knows that the more drunk she is, the easier it is to manipulate her. Now, if we compare the two characters, Jerry is clearly more sober than Cassie. The dynamic here is obvious. He has more awareness of himself than Cassie does. But, as his colleague said in the club,
Very
I mean,
nice.
that is just asking for it.
is Jerry really the bad guy for taking the opportunity? Although he still wants to convince Cassie and perhaps himself, he is better than them.
Hey, sorry about my friends at the bar. They're assholes.
I'm sorry.
There you go. You got it.
Don't go to sleep.
For Jerry, if Cassie is still awake, there's arguably consciousness to consent, or for her to feel pleasure. He keeps complimenting her, either in excitement at what is about to happen, or to appease her and make her believe this is a positive experience. It is here that the mood and tone really shifts to something far more sinister and uncomfortable for the audience, and the music starts up again. A long, drawn-out chord that is both a relief from the silence, but also terrifying as it is a nerve-wracking violin chord that builds and builds. We're about to see something we do not want to see, and something we did not expect to happen. Maybe at the back of Jerry's mind, he understands he's crossing the line because he says,
What are you?
It's okay, you're safe.
Cassie would feel anything but safe, but Jerry does not see himself as the bad guy. Isn't this better than Cassie being brutally attacked in a dark alley somewhere due to her drunk state, than by Jerry showering her in romantic compliments and kisses right now? The violin builds and builds, getting more disturbing and eerie, warning the audience of the imminent danger the character is in. But then, Cassie opens her eyes and looks directly at the camera, directly at the audience. And it's so jarring and unexpected that a loud beat plays to mark the moment. Cassie knows she's about to turn all expectations on their head, both for the audience and for Jerry. And as the foreboding loud music reaches its climax, the audience realizes the music is not warning Cassie. When Cassie exposes herself as stone cold sober, she also exposes Jerry. His face of fear is so genuine, like a deer in the headlights, because now the truth cannot be avoided. He knows exactly what he's doing, what lies he has told himself, and how he has tried to manipulate Cassie. It is all out on the table. Cut to the title, accompanied by a twinkling sound effect and adorned in stereotypically feminine bright pink letters and hearts. This is a film out to defy expectations. Here's the tongue-in-cheek wink again. This music is now loud, fun, and familiar. It feels like a celebration. The song is a cover of the popular disco track, It's Raining Men, a song that celebrates men raining from the skies for women to quickly flock around and have their way with. Once again, it's a reversal on the male gaze because the song is sexualizing men and celebrating the opportunities that come with new men arriving, told from a woman's perspective and for a woman's enjoyment. When blood drips on the pavement, it's quickly assumed Cassie's night met a violent end with Jerry. The camera pans up, but this is not blood. It is ketchup from Cassie's breakfast burger. She looks pretty content and confident. It does make you wonder how the night ended for Jerry though, and reminds the audience of the very real dangers Cassie could face in these vulnerable situations. The music softens to an instrumental-only backing as Cassie's walk is interrupted by jeering catcalls. Again, a familiar occurrence for women and something that is recommended to be ignored. The script originally had the men yell, "Walk of shame," to Cassie, because that is what this scene is meant to bring to mind. However, this is a walk of victory, and in response to the catcalling, Cassie makes them uncomfortable. But what did they expect from the interaction? What did they want from her? She gives them attention, and now they feel exposed and on guard, calling her a bitch. It highlights their irony and their ignorance, as Cassie is giving them the desired attention, but it's actually unexpected and direct. She is challenging the power dynamic. She turns expectations on its head, and this makes things uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. When the men leave, the music returns, just as loud and powerful as before. Cassie continues her victory walk. So, why does it work? The first 7 or so minutes of Promising Young Women set up the rest of the film perfectly. Fennell made sure the audience knew what they were getting into, in terms of heavy, sensitive content and uncomfortable scenes, paired with tongue-in-cheek humour and visuals. It introduces Cassie's dangerous pastime and the tension that comes with it in a way that shocks both the male characters and the audience. It also foreshadows a lot of moments later in the film, such as the decision to cast actors best known for their previous good guy comedic roles as the men who used this persona to prey on vulnerable women. Christopher Mintz-Plasse in Superbad, Max Greenfield in New Girl, Chris Lowell in Veronica Mars and How I Met Your Father. This casting choice demonstrates that anyone can be a predator, and anyone can be complicit. It also serves as an extra betrayal to the audience to see well-liked actors suddenly break their nice guy facade to hurt women and protect themselves. Jerry quickly takes the opportunity to physically impose himself on Cassie by licking his finger to wipe her around her eyes, so he can then lean in to kiss her. Similarly, Neil sticks his finger into Cassie's mouth to get her high on cocaine. Breaking these physical boundaries early makes it easier to go further later. Neil also tries to convince himself and others that he supports women, and cares about them when he complains about how society pressures women to wear makeup.
Makeup, it's like you guys are so much more beautiful without it. It's like guys don't even like that kind of stuff, you know? It's just this soul-sucking system meant to oppress women. It is fucked up.
Neil is negging Cassie here, which is a technique used to both make a woman feel bad about herself, but also feel special because he is paying attention to her anyway. Jerry tried to show his supposed support for women when he argued his female colleague's side to his colleagues, and told Cassie how safe she was with him. Both these men's actions directly contradict the image they are trying to convey, perhaps also failing themselves in the process. The scene with Neil shows the fallout and consequences of Cassie's reveal. The earlier scene with Jerry was more powerful by having them cut away, but this time the audience gets the gratification of understanding how some of these scenarios could play out. Cassie's mood here echoes the victory walk seen earlier in the film, showing how much of a rise she gets out of these scenarios. Paul returns later in the film. His earlier remarks about disliking the changes that have been made in society and the workplace come back to the forefront when he complains to Cassie,
Why do you guys have to ruin everything?
Paul is lashing out at their expectation of change and how men treat and view women that makes his life, and having sex, more difficult. None of these men feel threatened by Cassie, at first. Jerry and Neil both overstep her physical boundaries and aren't afraid of repercussions. It's only when she demonstrates a clear, full understanding of the situation they are forcing upon her that they express anger or fear. Promising Young Woman has a brilliantly crafted and intelligent opening. It's intense, it is gripping, and it sets up so much more for later in the film. The opening is also possibly the most graphic the film gets in terms of its subject matter. Fennell is careful not to add to the excessive amounts of assaults already depicted on screen in multiple movies and TV shows. The implication is enough. In fact, the word typically used to describe sexual assault is never used, because that in of itself can be upsetting to hear. But also, more importantly, other phrases such as asking for it or taking advantage are used, which are phrases used to somewhat soften the act and its seriousness, drawing attention to that. Emerald Fennell clearly cared about delivering a message in her film. She wanted to highlight the hypocrisies in society and the underlying misogyny and manipulation that still exists, despite the positive changes the Me Too movement may have brought about. At the same time, this is not a realistic film, and Fennell uses her tongue-in-cheek moments to demonstrate that this is not meant to be a serious mirror image of society. This is especially important when considering basically all of the male characters are shown to be pretty two-faced in the end, and not truly good guys as they claim. Also, the sad reality would be that Cassie would not be coming out of her faux drunken encounters without potential violent repercussions, nor would a happy-ish ending like the film depicts be likely at all. The opening of Promising Young Women hit me like a ton of bricks. I was enthralled and shocked, and I was hooked. I truly believe this is one of the best openings to a film I've ever seen.
I said, what are you doing?
Hi, we're your weather girls. And have we got news